Welcome to the XS Noize Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Millar. In this episode, I'm joined by Rick Nunn from The Milk. If you missed our last episode with musician, author, and founder of Louder Than More, John Robb, go back and check it out. And don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The Milk have been together since school, mixing soul, funk, and rock with a raw live energy. From their debut album, Tales from the Thames Delta, to Favourite Worry and Cages, they've earned a reputation for honesty and ambition. Now they're back with Borderlands, their boldest record yet. A widescreen, deeply personal album full of choirs, brass, strings, and stories of love, loss, and resilience. In this episode, Rick talks about the ambition behind Borderlands, the shift from major label compromises to independence, and how 3 decades of friendship still fuel The Milk. So let's get into it. This is Rick Nunn from The Milk on the XS Noize Podcast. Hi Rick, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So you're about to release your 4th album, Borderlands. It feels like a big cinematic step forward for The Milk. Why was now the time to go so ambitious?
I think the sort of timeline between this and the last record, they're kind of polar opposites in terms of the approach of the writing and the production in that. Historically, we're a soul band. We love all of the classic canon of soul music and we love that big production, everything from Stax and Chess and Motown and the Funk Brothers and Booker T and the MGs and that wall of sound, and we've done that earlier in our career. And on the record before this one, it was just before lockdown, we sort of went really insular and we went really sort of, we wanted to take away like the brass sections and the string sections and make it very much about just the rhythm section in the room. And we just got an appetite this time round to do the opposite, and not just throw the kitchen sink at it, but throw an emporium of kitchen sinks at it and see what we came up with and just try and be as ambitious as possible in an era where, I guess for context, what makes this approach a bit more accessible for us is that our drummer Mitch is a producer and he's got his own studio. So the clock wasn't as much of an issue. So we could really explore ideas that if you were on the clock would be a very expensive way to make an album, but instead we've got this luxury that Mitch has his own studio and we decided for the first time to record the whole thing there. It's a fantastic studio. We've done like vocal overdubs and stuff like that there before, but from the whole thing's done there. So that also meant we had more budget to higher string sections, higher brass sections, higher choirs, and a lot of the stuff that we're listening to right now, stuff like Kamasi Washington, that real big jazz orchestra stuff. We were like, let's go play with the big boys. Let's really make something that sounds super, super ambitious. So that's it.
No, it really does. I mean, vocally, you move between sort of grit and falsetto. Did you have to push yourself further to meet the scale of music?
They're vocal techniques that I've always played around with. We describe ourselves as a soul band. I'm a real fan of jazz, reggae, rock and roll. So we're not a really tight pigeonhole band, in that I can only sing or I'm only prepared to sing in one way. Like I'm only prepared to sing in a kind of Sam Cooke delivery where it's like gritty, beautiful screams. And I guess like the way we write and the way we perform, I think we allow ourselves a little bit of a broader brush when we approach soul music. So there'll be tunes that I'll sing falsetto. There'll be tunes that I give myself a sore throat from screaming too much. It's kind of whatever the song dictates, really.
You've always recorded live as a band. Why is that so important for The Milk compared to the modern cut and paste production?
Genuinely, it's it's how we've always done it. You know, we're a school band. Like, we met at school. We're one of those weird groups of men that you know, we're terrified of leaving each other. Um, and it's just how we've always done it. You know, we started making demos as teenagers, going to crappy local recording studios, playing live. It's how we write. We write by sitting in a room, the four of us, and playing. You know, we very rarely write in the box, you know, like on the computer. Very, very rarely. Um, and we would like to think that, similar to other strong rhythm sections, there's something about the four of us playing together that's greater than the sum of its parts. And I think if you isolate us as musicians and make us play at different times, there's maybe, you know, I'm a bit of a romantic, you know, I think there's a little bit of alchemy that you lose by splitting those musicians that are really used to playing with each other and asking them to play one at a time. As a music fan, they're the bands that I love. They're the rhythm sections that I love. And they're definitely the albums that I love, where there's been a real commitment to as much live music as possible. So another reason why we do it. Sorry, I should have said this at the start as well, is that in an era of a lot of bands out of necessity not going to big recording studios anymore and doing a lot of stuff at home or on laptops, because studio time is increasingly expensive and there's less and less budget for musicians, especially musicians earlier in their career. What you lose in that approach is a sense of performance. And like, I'm a Frank Sinatra fan. Frank Sinatra never recorded without an audience. He believed that there should always be an audience in front of him in order to get the best performance. So we would always arrange for there to be an audience, sometimes a small audience, but an audience in the studio with him, to make that sense of performance happen. And I guess we get that by having that expectation on ourselves that we've got to cut that track live, the four of us. It has to be a live rhythm section. We can then build on top of it with brass and strings and backing vocals or whatever. But we like that commitment to trying to do something live and trying to create a sense of performance. Again, it might just be something that I want to believe is true, but I genuinely do think records sound better that way.
Yeah, because music's all about feeling, isn't it? You know, so if you're playing live together, you know, and you're going to get into a groove together, and each take is going to be completely different with a different feeling, and then you're going to feed off the musicians for you vocally.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're so used to playing with each other that I benefit from having the other three musicians playing with me, and the sort of unspoken push and pull of, you know, there's a very particular way that Mitch the drummer and Luke the bass player sit with each other in terms of the back of the beat, and it's something we've been working on for years. You lose that if you isolate the musicians and ask them to do it one at a time. And there's a kind of a live response that you get by playing at the same time. And a lot of it might be subconscious, but there's a lot of response as musicians that you get when you're really used to playing with the same rhythm section. If you were to isolate each other and just get everyone to track it in the computer, I really do think you lose that stuff. And we should play to our strengths, and I think that's one of ours.
Let's talk about some of the tracks, Rick. I Need Your Love. That was the first track I heard, and that's what the album opens with. The Pearl and Dean style brass hook. Why was this track such a breakthrough?
Our drummer, Mitch, had been to Ronnie Scott's the night before and heard what he described as like an unbelievable brass section. Our trombonist was playing with them that evening, and he came back, played it to us, managed to find some of it online, played it to us, and just said, we've got to do something like this. So that was the starting point. We'd had a lock-in the night before. We all went to the pub, we had a lock-in the night before. We cut the rhythm section the next day on a stinking hangover, and it was sounding great. It was this very kind of more like a straight up jazz tune at the time, but it was missing something. I had this chorus line around, and we're quite into a bit of a handbrake turn within songs sometimes. And we decided to have this kind of juxtaposition between this huge, like, yeah, Pearl and Dean brass section, and then go down to this like really heartfelt ballad chorus. And we just really like that in tunes. I really like we always describe it as a sort of handbrake turn. And that was kind of it was the first time that we talked a lot about this idea of cinematic soul. We spent a long time talking about the album before we made it and what we wanted to lean on. And early doors, we'd come up with this idea of cinematic soul. And I think that track was the first time that we felt we'd really nailed that label to the door and been like, okay, that's what the Milk doing cinematic soul sounds like. And then it made the writing of the rest of the album a lot easier because we kind of had that sonic yardstick to measure other songs against. So yeah, it was a real kind of important line to cross in the sort of writing process, which, like I say, it's not that it made the other songs easier to write, but it made identifying from that point onwards, it made identifying whether a song was right for the album or not a lot easier and a lot quicker because we had a reference point of what cinematic soul for us sounded like, and we were all 100% into it. So when we were writing after that point, it wasn't necessarily that songs were right or they were wrong. It was just, sorry, good or bad. It was just, it's not hitting the brief, and we know what the brief is now because we've done it. So yeah, it was a kind of, it was like the Rosetta Stone, it was like the song that helped us translate the rest of the material.
The song "A Time to Let Go," you wrote this for your dad. So how hard was it to write and sing?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's easier singing about sunshine and lollipops, but I'm interested in hearing singers sing as authentically as possible. So where possible, we try to be authentic. So that might be that we're writing about something that we've done that we're not very proud of, but it's coming from a real place. If you've had some grief in your life and you can turn it into something creative and something beautiful, we very much wanted the song to sound beautiful. I think it's a good thing to come out of it. No, I like listening to singers that give that little bit of authenticity where it might be a little bit harder to sing about some subject matter, but I think that's a better thing to listen to. As a lover of music, that's what I want to listen to. I want to listen to people telling me something that's truthful. Everything's got a bit of poetic license, and we can always play with that poetic license. Like we're not making documentaries. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it might be a bit harder to sing, but that doesn't make it in any way less valid as something to do creatively for us.
The album title track "Borderlands," it's been called everything from a restless urge to a Brexit love letter. So what does the title mean to you now?
Borderlands we wrote for the previous record. So we wrote that 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And our label at the time just that they just didn't feel like it met the brief for that record. Maybe like the sound was too like epic, that the thing that we're going for now, which was the opposite of the previous record. So it's this idea that we've had for a while, like we all love that kind of like wanderlust, let's get in the car and drive off over the hill and into the next sunset, that like what's over the horizon. Like Bruce Springsteen made a career out of writing about stuff like that. And I like that feeling. I like hearing songs that evoke that feeling, like Thunder Road, Bruce Springsteen. I love that feeling. I love singing and listening to people sing about that idea of like, I just want to get in the car, get out of town and see what's over the horizon. So there's a bit of that in that title, Borderlands, but we'd like to think we're at least semi switched on to what's going on in the country. And we were all heartbroken about the madness that is Brexit. And it was someone came up with this idea that Borderlands could be our love letter to Europe.
Mhm.
Like, we miss you guys. It's not the same. We want to be back. How much it was the first and how much it was the latter, I'm not sure, but I think both of those ideas exist somewhere in that title.
The track I Saved My Best For You, it closes the record like an Elvis finale. Why was that the right song to end the album?
Well, the idea, not, we're not trying to pretend we're Pink Floyd or anything, but in the idea that we're running with we're allowing ourselves to run with the idea that there's a bit of a concept to the record. So the record opens with Pearl and Dean when you walk in the cinema, and it ends with, Casablanca.
Hmm.
It's they kiss, it's that final love scene where the lovers come together, and it's that cinematic kiss at the end of the record that everyone's been hoping for the last hour or so. And then the red curtain drops and everyone goes home. And it was that idea that's our Casablanca moment at the end. And they were the kind of bookends between the record. It's far from being able to sync up to the Wizard of Oz track by track, and anything like super high concepts. But we did believe in these two bookends to pillar the record within this idea of cinematic soul being more than just big production. We thought, well, can we go a little bit deeper than that and give it at least a beginning, middle, and end? And that's what we tried to do with that.
If you compare Borderlands to your debut album, Tales from the Thames Delta, sorry, it almost sounds like two different bands. So how do you see that as a singer?
Yeah, it's something that we grapple with a lot. I mean, we got signed. So that album came out on Sony. We got signed when we were sort of like 26, and we'd been in a band since we were 14. So we had 12 years of trying to get a record deal, gigging, learning our craft. And for the sort of 4 or 5 years before we got that record deal with Sony, we were mods. We were playing soul music, dressed in suits that we bought from Carnaby Street, and we were making waves doing that. We were these young mods playing soul music, and it felt great. And then we were offered this record deal with this major label, and in a lot of ways, all of our dreams came true. We really did go from being on the dole to being signed to a major record label. But we did have to make lots and lots of changes to what came natural in every department, like from how we dressed to the way that songs were produced, the songs that we would write, every element of the band was just shaped, and people were doing it for they're not evil people, they're doing it because they think by doing that you'll be even more successful, But the album was written by a young soul band, but it was produced and packaged and visually represented in a way that major record label at the time thought would make it more commercially viable. But there's no violins here, like we had an amazing time. It was like, like I say, in so many ways, all of our dreams came true. With hindsight, creatively, it's not close to what was in our core in terms of what we were really into, but I might still be on the dole if I hadn't have taken that opportunity. I think since everything that we've done since that debut album, we've proved our sort of genuine credentials, where we've had record labels since and record deals since, but we've always had creative control. And I think anyone that spends any time looking at the back catalogue of the band can see that timeline and can see that we've, a long time ago, navigated back to our authentic selves.
Yeah, I mean, did that experience give you the conviction to follow your instincts the way you are now?
Yeah. Biggest things for me that I realised quite early on being signed to a major is that when you're a young musician, a young band, you think that there's this building full of absolute geniuses because they work at a major record label. And we met some really nice people, and sometimes they had some really good ideas. However, there was a bit of seeing behind the wizard's curtain, good to go back to the Wizard of Oz analogy. Like there was a lot of just some old skinny geezer pulling levers, and there was some mad shit being thrown around, and you thought, actually, like, I might not have been working at a major record label all my life, but I do know my band and I know what my band does best. And for too long during that experience, we sort of gave into their experience. And at the end of the day, they were bankrolling it, and they were bankrolling it very generously. And like I said, I can't say it enough. We had an amazing time. It was excellent, but we had to concede a lot of creative ground in order to get it. But like I say, we did it, and we've had record deals and put out albums ever since, and we've never stopped. Had we not have done that, we may have never made any albums, but we had to go there to come back. And that's what we did. And it might not be my favorite Milk album, but that's been our journey. And I think, we should be really grateful for that time that we were signed to a major, because we still have a lot of a fan base that found out about us during that period and that have still been loyal ever since, that have sort of grown with the band as we've re-navigated back to a more authentic version of ourselves.
You've played Glastonbury, Isle of Wight, Shepherd's Bush Empire. With Borderlands being so cinematic, did you imagine those stages while you're creating the album?
The stage that we've been fixated on for the whole making of the album is the Royal Albert Hall, which we haven't played yet. But we think that would be the perfect backdrop.
Yeah.
The perfect backdrop for this record. It's a pretty big beast when we get the whole band together to recreate it live. We've done something similar at Union Chapel. We made a live album at Union Chapel on an album called Favourite Worry. And we had the string section and the brass section, and we've had backing vocalists, and it's a big thing to take out on the road. But we've had this, we want to manifest it. We've been thinking all through the making of the record that we need to get this album on the stage at the Royal Albert Hall. So that's what we're trying to manifest, and that's what we've been imagining in terms of where it should be showcased.
Yeah, that will be perfect, for the big stage, with the choirs and brass, it'll be amazing. So do you see Borderlands as the start of a new chapter for the band?
I think it's a reminder personally, I think I might not be speaking for all of the boys. Personally, I think it's a reminder of what I think we do best, which is big production soul music, but with a broad brush of what I mean by soul music. I personally, that's what I listen to. That's what I listen to the most. Most of my record collection focuses on that, and I think it's what we're best at. And I think it's maybe a reminder to the four of us that we should probably do more of it and keep doing it. It's had a really good reception so far to the people that have been listening to it. We've got quite a few people championing it in terms of radio. The close friends that we've played the record to have responded to it really well. We should be getting the physical copies really soon. The vinyl's only a couple of weeks away, similar with the CDs. The tour starts next week. So yeah, we're looking forward to getting feedback on it. But we are very, everyone's. I've heard bands describe it this way before. It's like everyone thinks their newborn baby's beautiful, but not all newborn babies are beautiful. I genuinely think this newborn baby is gorgeous, and I'd love to make more records that look and sound like this one.
But you've released 3 albums prior to the Borderlands. We've already mentioned the debut album, Tales from the Thames Delta. So when I mention the other 2, just tell me what's the first thing that comes into your mind, a memory, a story, or even just a word. So we've talked about the debut album. What about Favourite Worry from 2015?
It was this idyllic recording experience on the Isle of Wight over a New Year's and Christmas. And it was in this medieval barn that had been converted into an incredible studio. We had an amazing producer, Paul Butler of the Bees, who produced Michael Kiwanuka and a lot of other people. And he was not just then, but since has been so influential on us as writers and in terms of how we engineer and produce records and think about production. So his legacy in terms of the impact that he's had on the band still lasts today. He had a huge influence on us, and like me as an individual and as the band as a collective. Paul Butler is a creative force, and it was just this idyllic 2 or 3 weeks of recording over a Christmas and New Year, and really good times. The whole record was fueled on Dark and Stormies, rum, ginger ale, and lime, and every single take of every single track, I had a Dark and Stormy next to me. Yeah, loved it. Absolutely loved the making of that album.
What about Cages from 2019?
Very, very different experience. We recorded it in London. The only other musician that we had involved was our long-running Hammond organ player, Charlie Myers, who did some overdubs for us. But it was very much like an insular record that we put a lot of craft into, but it was very deliberately smaller. We wanted it to sound intimate and small. And unfortunately, I think it was 2 weeks after we released it, the world went into lockdown. I genuinely believe that there's going to be radio phone-ins in years to come of the albums that COVID forgot. And I've not got illusions of grandeur. I'm not necessarily saying that the Milk's third album, Cages, will be included in that radio phone-in. But journalists don't write about old news. And once the world came out of lockdown and that album was 18 months old, it's not a news story. So it literally just got shelved. We had 50, 60-day tour and festivals lined up. We had a big campaign of publicity lined up, and it was just the oxygen got removed, not just from us, but from every creative project that was planned and scheduled for that period. So it's kind of like this ghost album for us. It's a bit of a poltergeist album, like we made it, but it never actually landed. We never played it live. We never toured it. We never really got to talk about it to anyone. So yeah, poltergeist is the word that comes to mind when I think of that. It just never saw the light of day. It really didn't.
I'm going to put you on the spot, Rick. If someone wanted to understand the music of the Milk, what 5 songs should they start with?
Favourite Worry, Borderlands, I Need Your Love, Wanderlust, and Don't Give Up the Night.
Good choices. Good choices. Music is often the soundtrack to our lives, but it is. What song or album from another band or artist brings back the best memories for you personally?
I'm a huge Beatles nut. It's hard because memories of when you're growing up, the albums that I was listening to when I was a teenager, when you've got those real defining memories, it's not kind of music that I would necessarily relate myself to now, but that's where the memories are. Oh man, the album that I put on that makes me think.
Or even, what was the first album or song that you heard and you thought, that really, really got you and you really had to have and, you really enjoyed?
Yeah. Okay. I was about 11 years old, and my best mate at the time, Darren Whitbread, he had 3 older brothers. He did, and I did, we really looked up to these brothers. They were everything we wanted to be. They were going to football every weekend. They were going to gigs every weekend. They were always in the working men's club that our dads used to hang out in. They were like, that's what we wanted to be at 11 years old. And we was always sleeping around each other's houses. And it was a Friday night. And his brother, and I was round his house. And I was sleeping at his house that night. And he said, do you want to watch some of my brother's videotapes? Sounds good. And in the same night, as an 11-year-old, we watched Quadrophenia, followed by Oasis Live by the Sea. And that was the gig I think they recorded in Southend, which isn't far from where I grew up. That was like the combination that night. I didn't have a clue. My dad used to live and listen to The Who, so I kind of knew about The Who, but I wasn't at an age where I was really appreciating my dad's records because they were his. 11, you don't want to be, you want to cut your own cloth. But in the same night, I watched Quadrophenia and Oasis Live by the Sea, and it changed me. It genuinely changed me, like the combination of those two things. And I just thought, right, I want to do that. I couldn't really articulate what that was. But from that point onwards, I started learning Beatles songs and Oasis songs, and I started playing in my dad's working men's club on a Sunday afternoon. So I used to learn like 4 or 5 Beatles songs on my acoustic guitar, and then that they would let me get up and play the songs that I'd learned in the last couple of weeks. And then I started putting word about at school that I wanted to start a band, and then within a couple of years, the Milk, or at least the first version of the Milk, spawned from that. But it all spawned from that lightning bolt as an 11-year-old of watching a double header of Quadrophenia and Oasis Live by the Sea. And it changed me as a kid. It kind of defined what I then wanted to do and what I wanted to be.
If you could relive one musical moment from your career so far, what would it be?
The Glastonbury gig was like a dream come true. It really was. And we nearly didn't make it. We got stuck in traffic and we walked on stage. We got on site as we were meant to be walking on stage. And we kind of, we just had to start as we were setting up the gear, as our team was setting up the gear. So we had a plan where we just get my mic on and my piano on. And then I just started playing whilst the rest of the kit was up because we were so tight for time. But we played on the Friday night on the left field stage, which one of the big circus tents. And we were really lucky. Like, we had a packed out crowd. We got loads of our pals in, and we just had the greatest weekend of our lives. It was just like every kid that's ever been in a band wants to play Glastonbury. We had like 10 of our best mates there. And then after the gig, we went and saw Chic and just partied very hard. And then luckily didn't have gigs for the rest of the weekend, so stayed the whole weekend. It was all of our dreams come true. Like, a lot of people play Glastonbury, especially like bands at our level where you're not headlining or anything like it. A lot of people play Glastonbury and it ends up not quite living up to their expectations because you're on at 3 a.m. down some lane in the arse end of nowhere. But you've ticked that box, that Glastonbury box. But we were just really lucky. It really was like this incredible show where all the stars aligned, and I am very grateful for it. It was brilliant.
Class. Well, finally, Rick, what's next for the Milk? The album's coming out soon. Then some live shows, hopefully the Albert Hall.
Yeah. So the tour starts next week in Bury St Edmunds. We're doing like London, Manchester, Stroud, Shoreham. We're doing some small theatre acoustic gigs. Then our bass player's having a baby just before Christmas, so we're going to have a little hiatus. Then we're going to go back out on the road early in the new year, and hopefully by that point the album's landed in a lot of people's record collections, and then you've got like that second wave of people coming to the shows that have like had time to to digest the record, and then they're coming with that enthusiasm where they're informed about it rather than this first run that we're doing is kind of like introducing people to the record. But when we go out early in the new year, hopefully it will be more that people have had time with the record and have had time to appreciate it and find out what they particularly like about it. And with other records where we've toured, it's always interesting, that second wave where the fans really know the album by that point, but it's kind of still fresh. So that's going to be really cool. And I think we're just going to crack on writing the next record and just keep the momentum up.
For anyone listening, how can they get the album?
You can order it online at thisisthemilk.com.
Brilliant. And I'll say it again, it's absolutely brilliant. I love it. Really,
Yes,
really.
man, I really appreciate it. Well, it sounds even better on vinyl. We've had the test presses, and it was always intended to be listened to on record. But yeah, I really appreciate the kind words. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah. Well, Rick, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you. Really, really enjoyed it. So,
yeah, man. No. I really enjoyed the interview, and thanks so much for taking the time to get to know the record.